People say I'm pretty. I don't know, and I really don't care, but I'll tell you one thing. No one has ever seen me morph into an elephant, has ever used the word pretty to describe it. I felt the thickening of my legs and arms. I watched as my skin grew leathery and gray as mud. I felt the sudden sprouting of my trunk as my nose and upper lip seemed to explode outward. Pinocchio, eat your heart out, Cassie whispered. I felt the teeth in the front of my mouth run together and then grow and grow into long, spear-length tusks. It's a creepy sensation, by the way. Not painful, but definitely creepy. I was growing big, more than big. I was gaining several thousand pounds. Several thousand pounds. I was about 12 or 13 feet tall. I had ears like beach blankets. I had a little ropey tail. I was a full-grown African elephant, and I was ready to have a little, talk with Mr. Joseph something. I threw up my trunk and let go of a trumpet blast. It was the sound of a very angry elephant. You could have warned me, I heard Cassie whisper. I almost wet myself over here. It took about 3 minutes before the trainer came rushing into the pen. In the dark, all he saw were the gray shapes of his elephants. I wasn't exactly hiding because, let's face it, when you're an elephant, you can't scrunch up and look small. But I was staying back until he was all the way inside the pen. Then, I lunged forward, pushing 2 of the other elephants aside. The trainer gaped up at me. What the? In a sudden fluid movement, as he stared in puzzlement, I wrapped my trunk around his waist. Hey, you're not one of my elephants. Here's the thing about elephant trunks. They are so subtle that I can pick up an egg with my trunk and never crack it. Or I can pick up a tree and throw it across the yard. Joseph something knew this. I wrapped my trunk tightly around his waist and then lifted him up off the ground. His feet kicked helplessly in the air. His arms pounded weakly on my trunk. I lifted him up until he was at my eye level. Hi, Joseph, I said, using thought speak. What the? Who said that? I'm hearing voices. Me, I replied. I said it. See, Joseph, I'm from the International Elephant Police. We've had some complaints about you. This is crazy. What are you? Is this some sort of joke? So I squeezed him a little tighter, just enough so he couldn't really breathe very well. Now listen to me, because I could just as easily squeeze you out like a tube of toothpaste, so pay attention. You have been using cattle prods on your elephants. That is a no-no. But, he gasped, they are my property. This man was just not getting the message. So I extended my trunk a little and held him right over the tip of my left tusk, like a worm about to be placed on a fishing hook. With one twitch of my trunk, I can make you a shish kebab. Now are you going to listen to me? Yes, I'm listening, he said. I'm listening very closely. No more cattle prods. No more pain of any kind. Do you understand me? Yes. Because I'll be watching. And if you ever hurt an elephant again, ever, I will come back for you. I will squeeze you till you pop like an overcooked hot dog. Do you understand me? Yes. Joseph, can you fly? What? Can I fly? No, of course not. I'll bet you can, I said. And with that, I lowered my trunk almost to the ground. Then, with a sudden toss of my head and a deft twist of my trunk, I sent Joseph something flying. He landed safely atop a net, about 20 feet away. Now can we go home, Cassie asked. You threw the guy into the air? Jake asked. Wasn't that maybe just a little unnecessary? No, he made me mad, I said. And it was the next day after school, a Monday. We were walking through the woods, me, Cassie, Jake, Marco, and Tobias. Of course, Tobias wasn't really walking. He was flying overhead in little hops from branch to branch. He stayed close so he could hear us. Red-tailed hawks have excellent hearing, but he still had to stay fairly close. Well, Rachel, you know I sympathize, Jake said mildly, but I don't think our job is really to right every wrong that's done to animals. That would be a full-time job, unfortunately. I looked at Cassie. She gave me a wink. We kind of didn't tell Jake that she'd been there too. Cassie and Jake like each other. she didn't want him to be mad at her. With me, it's a different story. Everyone knows I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing. We have other stuff to deal with, Marco grumbled. The Andalite didn't give us this power so we could turn into the Animorph Society for the prevention of cruelty to animals. Fine, I said, which wasn't exactly like admitting I was wrong. But what's got you so serious, Marco? Let's wait till we find Axe. I don't want to have to tell the story twice. So we tromped noisily through the woods. I felt a surge of excitement. You couldn't miss the tension in Marco's voice. Something was up. There was a smell of danger in the air, and that meant action. I like action. I like doing things instead of just talking about them. Marco makes fun of me over it. He calls me Xena, warrior princess. But I'm not one of those morons who's just into danger for its own sake. It's not about the cheap thrills. It's about feeling like I'm involved in something very important. I mean, let's face it. As corny as it sounds, we're trying to help save the world. It began months ago. The 5 of us just happened to get together at the mall. It's not like we were a group, really. Not before that night. Jake's my cousin, but we never hung out together much. Jake's sort of in charge. It's not something he even asked for. It's just something he's good at dealing with responsibility. He's the kind of person you automatically turn to if there's a crisis. And probably the best thing about him is that he can tell people what to do without ever sounding bossy. Since when don't you want to tell the same story twice, Jake teased Marco. I've known you tell the same tired jokes 80 or 90 times. It's your own fault, Marco said. If you would just laugh the first time, I wouldn't have to keep telling them. Marco is Jake's best friend. He's smaller than Jake, funnier, darker, more skeptical, but his suspicious nature makes him very good at seeing beneath the surface of things. And as much as he whines and complains about dangerous situations we get into, he's still there in the worst of the fight, still making dumb jokes. Marco has changed lately, at least a little. He doesn't resist being an Animorph like he used to. I don't know why. Maybe it's because his dad finally seems to have gotten over the death of Marco's mother. I don't know. Hey, look, over by that tree. See? A baby skunk with its mother. Cassie, of course. No one else would notice or get excited over skunks. Let's run right over and pet them, Marco said. Cassie laughed. I've handled skunks plenty of times and never been sprayed. Yeah, well, that's you, Dr. Doolittle. Cassie has been my best friend forever. I have no idea why. No one does, because we seem like we would never get along. Cassie lives on a farm. Both her parents are veterinarians. She spends all her free time in the wildlife rehabilitation clinic her dad runs in the barn. They save injured animals. Cassie's very into animals, but she's not one of those animal lovers who can't stand people. She just thinks of humans as a different species of animal. And then there's Tobias. Back when this all started, Tobias was barely an acquaintance of Jake and Marco, although I kind of knew him. He was a sweet, poetic kind of guy, the kind bullies love to pick on. He used to have messy, out-of-control hair and dreamy eyes that always seemed to be looking at something no one else could see. Used to. Now he has fierce, angry eyes that look through you like laser beams. Now he has brownish feathers and a white crest and a reddish tail and cruel-looking talons and wickedly curved beak. Tobias was trapped in a morph. Now he's a red-tailed hawk. A predator who lives on mice and rabbits and sometimes other birds. I still see him as sweet, gentle Tobias, but he has been a hawk for a long time now. The gift of the Andalite, the power to morph, is a wonderful weapon, but like any weapon, it can destroy those who use it. Here he comes, Tobias called down in thought speak we use when we're in a morph. I think he sees us. I heard the sound of fallen leaves being stirred, a faint drumbeat of pounding hooves on pine needles. Then, with a leap, he cleared a fallen tree trunk and landed a few feet away from us. Aximili Excaruth Issel. We call him Axe for short. The sole survivor of the destroyed Andalite dome ship. The only living Andalite on planet Earth. Axe is the brother of Prince Elfingor, the Andalite who warned us about the Yeerk invasion and gave us the power to morph. Prince Elfingor, who was destroyed by Visser III, leader of the Yeerk forces on Earth. Hello, Prince Jake, Axe said. Hello, all. As much as I know Axe, and even consider him a friend, it's always a little bit of a shock to see him. He looks like some odd cross of a human, a deer, and a scorpion, but not really like any of those things. His upper body and head are more or less the human-looking parts. He has thin arms and many-fingered hands. His face is flat, with slits for a nose and 2 large almond eyes. He has no mouth at all, which is why thought speak is the natural language of Andalites. From atop his head rise 2 stalks, each with an eye on the end. He can turn these eyes in any direction he wants. They're completely independent of his main eyes. His body is that of a pale blue and tan deer, or a thin pony. He has 4 legs that end in hooves, but his back slopes down so that you would never be tempted to think of riding him. He has a tail, a long, thick, powerful tail that ends in a deadly scythe-shaped blade. I've seen him use that tail. He can strike so fast that the human eye sees nothing but a blur. "Hey, Axe," Marco said. "How's it going?" "It is going wonderfully. I was up in the hills yesterday, and I was attacked by one of those very large cats. What do you call them? Cougars? It was very exciting." "Are you okay?" I asked. "Certainly, Rachel. And I did not hurt the cougar, Cassie. Not fatally, anyway. But he won't try to eat me again, I think." Axe gave his strange Andalite smile, an expression he managed even without a mouth. Marco rolled his eyes. "I'm telling you, Axe and Rachel belong together. The 2 of you are sick. Someday you should get married while bungee jumping into an active volcano." I squirmed a little. Not because I minded Marco thinking I was bold, but because I really was not interested in Axe that way. "Okay, now that we're all here, Marco, maybe you could tell us why we're all here," Jake said. "I have some news," Marco began. "Actually, Tobias and I have some news." I glanced at Tobias sitting in the tree. Of course, he showed no expression. He just fixed his piercing gaze on Marco. Marco swaggered just a bit as we formed a circle around him. "It's a tale of initiative and courage, and yes, brilliance," Marco began. No. "Just tell us, Marco," I snapped. "Don't try to milk the suspense." "Okay," he said with an easy laugh. "My fellow Animorphs and visiting alien, we have found a way into the Yerk pool."